Hello and welcome to Monday's episode of the Terrace Scottish Football Podcast. I know what you're all thinking. That doesn't sound like a jambo. And you're correct. This is a jambo-free episode. Remarkably, I am your host, Gary Cocker, and I am joined by a fellow Diddy team fan, Craig Anderson. Craig, how are you?
I'm good, and I can't help thinking the scheduling here must have been done in the expectation Hearts would not win, because I don't think they would have allowed us loose on this had they known what was about to transpire.
I am half expecting to see a slightly drunk Joel Sked barge in on Riverside to demand his pound of flesh. But no, we have been tasked with going through these 6 weekend Premiership fixtures, all of which have got, plenty of talking points, plenty to go over, and plenty of hashtag narratives throughout the weekend. But before we get to that, Craig, how the heck are you? What's life been treating you with so far?
I'm good. I've had a pretty busy couple of weeks for my job. Usually I have the opportunity to be laid back at times, but just for whatever reason, it's all been mounting up over the last couple of weeks. Tomorrow I have an event I'm giving a talk, and after that it's a bit more chilled out. So I'm thoroughly looking forward to that. I decided for some reason to insert a podcast into the midst of all this as well. But yeah, apart from that, all good. Halloween party this afternoon, which was like children's Halloween party. So I was... My daughter dressed up as Bingo from the hit TV show Bluey. So I only had to adorn some bandit ears. That's the dad of Bluey for all of those who don't have the children of that age. So I was relatively outfit free, which suited me nicely. What about yourself, Gary? How are you getting on?
I similarly am in Halloween mode. There is a scarecrow getting built in the room next to me. It's Stickman. From the
very good.
For those who don't know, Stickman is probably the easiest kids TV character to turn into a scarecrow. I have mixed feelings about Halloween, Craig. I love it, but I hate the colour scheme. So, you've just got to sort of go with it. I'm trying to make the purple a little bit more of it, but sadly, a certain team's third kit seems to always be purple at the moment as well. So I cannot win.
It's only navy blue Halloween in sight.
Yeah, but there's going to be an alternate reality. You know how they always say that, there's something that you should make your kids believe is, true, even though it's not just for your own entertainment. I think I'm just going to make everything a dark blue Halloween. But speaking of horror shows, we might as well get on to the football. There was a 3-1 victory, a 3-1 home victory for a team that is dreaming of lifting the Premiership title. That's right, we're starting off at Ibrox. No, we're not. We're absolutely not going there. We are going to the only game which, unfortunately, due to this being the Terrace Scottish Football Podcast, we can go to, which was Sunday midday's game at Tynecastle between Hearts and Celtic. Before the game, Hearts were 5 points clear at the top of the league. Celtic were riven by injuries and a pretty dire squad. Anyway, we all thought this was only going to go one way, and we were all entirely wrong as Hearts ran out pretty comfortable 3-1 winners. And opening goal, gifted to them, very much gifted to them by Dane Murray, was cancelled out by Callum McGregor's equaliser before Keith Rudis and Shankland would score 2 early second half goals to ensure that the points remained down Tynecastle way. Craig, I watched this game. I think you watched this game too. We'll start with the question that everyone's got on their lips. Hearts 8 points clear. Do we now start calling them title challengers?
Sadly, yes. We were talking about this before off air, and the fact that obviously I think most of Scottish football will be in agreement that anyone other than Rangers or Celtic winning the title would be a good thing. But I would have Hearts, partly because of my involvement in the podcast and having to listen to them on a regular basis, is quite low down the list of the teams I would like to do it. But nonetheless, yeah, I think we do. I was out at the Football Cliches live show through the week and was chatting to Joel Sked and Robert Borthwick before it, and we were kind of saying, I was saying, if Hearts win this and they go 8 points clear, it's such a massive cushion to build up that it buys them the opportunity to have a blip, because we know the blip will come. We know as much as Hearts have been good, and we'll get on to some of the strengths of their performances, have not been flawless. And they haven't, it's not like they have come out and smashed everyone that's been put in front of them every week. They've had to work for some of the results. They've had to they've maybe rode the luck a couple of times, but nonetheless, when you get this 8-point lead, it means that, for example, if they go to Paisley through the week and do lose, it's not panic stations. So they have built up this chance. And I was looking at the stats, and my belief is I'm about 90%, 95% sure it's the first time since Aberdeen won the league in 1985 that a team other than Rangers or Celtic have had an 8-point lead. And even when Aberdeen did have it that season, it was with 2 games, like Celtic had 2 games in hand. So it is unprecedented. And for that reason, I think it's hard to say anything other than it being a genuine opportunity. It's not more than that at the moment because we are 9 games into the season, but it's a big, big gap already.
Yeah, and as you say, even if there's a slip up in midweek, at the weekend to come, Hearts are hosting Stephen Presley's Dundee, and Celtic are in League Cup semi-final duty against Rangers as well. So there's already a chance, there could well be a chance that this time next week, whoever is sitting down to discuss the pod, Hearts could be 11 points clear, albeit having played a game more, which is absolutely mad. And I think I saw, and again, you're the stats guy, not me, so I might be wrong on this, but I think Hearts have got only 2 or 3 midweek games between now and the end of January, whereas Celtic, because of their involvement in Europe, have got 7.
Yeah.
And, it's already a Celtic squad, and we might as well move on to the absolute nick of the Celtic team.
Yeah.
Because it's, obviously losing Alistair Johnson foolishly. Me and Andy spoke about that on the recent Patreon. Anthony Johnson, he's a singer that won the Mercury Music Prize,
yes,
I think. But it's not him, it's Alistair Johnson. They've lost him through injury again when they didn't need to. Cameron Carter-Vickers is out for a
long
time. And we saw that the big call that I think Brendan Rodgers made was, instead of bringing in Austin Trusty, who Celtic paid a substantial 7-figure sum,
5 or 6 million, maybe.
Yeah. Instead of bringing him in, he brought in Dane Murray. And I don't know about you, Craig, and I don't know if you know this, but how old did you think Dane Murray was before?
I would have said 19, but I'm now thinking is he actually 22 or something because he's a Celtic youngster. Yeah.
Yeah, he's 22.
Yeah.
So that immediately evaporated some of my sympathy for the guy because he had an appalling game.
So last weekend, in the aftermath of Hearts beating Killie at Rugby Park, a victory they thoroughly deserved. They were very impressive, especially after they went ahead in that game. I kind of was talking about this game and said I think Celtic will kind of bring them back down to earth. That was on Saturday evening. Then I watched Celtic capitulate against Dundee on Sunday, and I watched them lose 2 players on, as we spoke about, on Thursday night. And then I was looking at this and I looked at that starting lineup and I thought, if Hearts cannot beat this team now, this is as good a chance as you'll get. The Celtic team just looks absolute shit on paper. The goalkeeper is not having a good season. He's very much on the wane. He was a good goalkeeper at one point, but never an elite goalkeeper, and he's on the wane. The back 4 is creaking. They've got a youngster, Donovan, who actually looks like he might be all right, and he wasn't the worst by any means in this game. They've got Liam Scales, who to me has actually probably been pretty good for Celtic most of the time, but he's generally the spare man in the defence. He's generally the one doing, like Carter-Vickers is doing the hard work and he's kind of covering it up. They had Dane Murray, and we get onto him, absolute horror show for him. And you've got Kieran Tierney, clearly an excellent player, but a bit of a shadow with injury. The midfield is still, on paper, looks all right, but then you also look at them up front and you think that front 3 does not strike fear into anyone. You've got Nygren, who to me is a central mid playing in a wide role. You've got Johnny Kenny. Would he even get a game for most other Premiership teams? Don't think so. And then you've got other, I feel like it's that they're the 2 positions where you look at it and you go, you should not possibly be picking these players. Like Tannadice, jury's out on him, but there's at least maybe something there. He didn't show it here. He's not showed it in the last couple, but you've seen it a couple of times. And then you look at the bench and you're like, there's not even anything to bring on in place of that. It's dire.
And I mean, we will get on to the match in a minute, but just while I remember and while we're on this topic, it was fascinating to see Chris Sutton and Neil Lennon have a little bit of a set to where Chris Sutton quite rightly was pointing out that this is a disaster of the Celtic board's making now. Obviously, Brendan Rodgers still spent more money than I think all the other clubs combined, even Rangers, would be able to spend in the transfer market. But it was blindingly obvious what Celtic needed to do in the summer, and they didn't do it. And that's the fault of the guys holding the purse strings, which was a position that Neil Lennon didn't like to hear. He's maybe wondering if he's going to be getting a call in a couple of weeks' time to take on a particular role at Celtic. But it's undeniable. I mean, they've had rotten luck with injuries, but anyone can have that. And it's just the level to which the starting 11 has dropped is absolutely terrifying. And I think that, going on Dane Murray, I mean, this feels a little bit like...
It's his ninth game for Celtic. Like, that's it. And his fifth start.
Yeah. And other than, it feels a little bit, other than that, Mrs. Lincoln, how was the play? But other than the own goal, giving away the penalty, and shifting away from Keys Rangers' shot, he had a pretty good game. Yeah. If you ignore the massive...
The 3 goals he cost him, yeah.
All 3 Hearts goals. But again, it feels very unfair on him, because I don't think at the start of the season, him or Johnny Kenny or Colby Donovan would have been looking and thinking we're going to be, regular starters.
It points to this. So perhaps Dane Murray is not good enough to play for Celtic anyway. The evidence would suggest that's probably the case. But we've said it so many times, how many opportunities has Celtic have romped towards league titles, have been playing League Cup games at home to League One sides and stuff like that? How many opportunities have they had to give more minutes to their youth team players and generally not done it? I've said that Murray's played 9 games for Celtic, had his loan spell at Queen's Park. That's all the football he's played, apart from presumably, I don't follow it enough, but B team games in the definitely in the Challenge Cup, but probably also in the Lowland League. That's not good preparation. He could easily have had appearances against good teams under his belt, so that if he does have to get chucked in a game like this, he's a little bit more ready for it, because that... Yeah, you mentioned that's 3 catastrophic errors that lead to a goal. I mean, sorry, let's say 2 catastrophic errors and 1 pretty poor one for the second goal. Maybe, as I say, he wouldn't have been good enough anyway, but had he had another 10, 15 games in him and those plenty of opportunities that we described, maybe things would have been a bit different. But that is entirely on Rodgers, and it's entirely on, you mentioned Neil Lennon, people like him as well. Maybe it's unfair on him given how long ago he was Celtic manager, but Postecoglou certainly could have given the opportunities. And how many Celtic youngsters, like Colby Donovan, getting this run of games that he's had recently actually feels quite unusual.
Yeah, and
because he's actually been given a chance.
Yeah, and he was supposed to be coming on loan to Dundee when Alistair Johnson picked up his injury. So had it not been for that, he probably would have been recalled at this point anyway, because I think Celtic have finally realised Tony Ralston's maybe not the answer either. But we should probably go through the action as well, and we should also take some time, as much as it pains both of us, to praise Heart of Midlothian Football Club and Derek McInnes.
Keep it to the minimum. Keep it to the minimum, Gary.
Yeah, but I am sure that there will be a 3.5 hour pod in midweek with Joel waxing lyrical. I always pick on Joel for this, and it's entirely unfair. But anyway, obviously the opening goal came very early on in the match. It was a pretty good save from Schmeichel, who then... an
excellent save, I would say, actually. I thought I was going in.
Yeah. And so he managed to claw the ball out. It landed at Shankland's feet. Now, I think I said this in the group chat. When Shankland hit this, there was obviously, it was happening so fast, but in my head in a split second, I thought, this could get put in the back of the net if in this case, Dane Murray isn't careful. And right enough, he absolutely leathered it into the back of the net when, if he just left it, it wouldn't have gone in. Or if he'd managed to clear it up the field.
I think he has to do something because Tannadice is loitering at the back post. So I think he does have to. He does have to act. It's not one that he can just leave. But you are a professional footballer playing for one of the biggest clubs in the country. You're not 12 years old. You should be able to kick the ball. He's, I think, brought into the team because he's left-footed as well. So do you know what I mean? I don't think clearing that ball anywhere other than into your own net is much of an ask, but it can happen. But it's pretty poor.
But it came on the back of, and obviously it was quite early in the game. But I mean, Hearts were all over Celtic from the off, and it was just alarming in a way to see the difference in energy and cohesion and game plan between the two up until that point, at which point I think Callum McGregor sort of realised, I'm going to have to do something here, and basically put them all on his back and dragged them through the rest of that half.
Yeah, but the thing is, for me, we've seen this a little bit because I think McInnes got a little bit of criticism. I generally think most of it unfair during his Aberdeen time for maybe being a bit passive against Celtic. Sometimes they were a bit too passive. They did beat them a few times in big games as well. But you can't help thinking of those cup finals, and they would maybe set out to do a man-to-man marking job and stuff. And that was on Brendan Rodgers' previous Aberdeen team. But last season, Celtic came to Rugby Park, and I think it was the first time they came. Yeah, it was the first time they came because they battled us the second, I think, if I'm getting my games right. But Kelly dominated Celtic in a pretty similar way to the way that Hearts played today. But funnily enough, Hearts had better players and were a bit more clinical because Kelly lost that game 2-0. But it was definitely feels like he's maybe found a way to play in these games, because I was worried Hearts would start quite passively and, try and find their way into the game, but they didn't. They just went after Celtic straight from the start, and they played like a team who thought Celtic were there for the taking, and that's what you saw. And then, as you say, they fell away a bit after they scored, but that start was enough for me to kind of sit up and be like, right, they really actually fancy this.
Mm-hmm.
And it was the same with the start of the second half, which we'll get onto.
Yeah, and I mean, I think we can. It was a terrific goal, really well worked goal from Callum McGregor to level things up long before the break, in fact. But I think we do have to spend. I know we've spent a long time on this game already, but just to sort of complete the Dane Murray trilogy, the second goal was again Tannadice is probably the find of the boop-de-boops, as we like to call
very
him.
much so. Braga's good, but he's...
Yeah, but he is the one that I went through, again, I went through the Terrace group chat to see if any of us had said anything really stupid about him when he was signed, and I came closest, but all I said was that's a real boop-de-boop signing, because he came out of absolutely nowhere, and so far he has demonstrated in spades the potential of Jamestown Analytics, and he had a terrific game today, and he caps it off with a really well worked goal. Again, it's always that thing, isn't it? And I had it last week of balancing up, and obviously Dundee and Hearts are on very different paths this season, to say the least. But you're balancing what your team does versus the shortcomings and failures of Celtic, and this was a prime example, because when I saw the goal as live, I thought that's a terrific goal. Tannadice gets the ball, sort of cuts inside him from just outside the penalty box, squeezes it in at Schmeichel's near post, and then I saw the replays, and you see quite clearly that Dane Murray moves out of the way of it, and Schmeichel is going mad at him. In his defence, I wonder if he was maybe obviously slightly scarred from the first half, from his mistake in the first half, and maybe he was thinking, if I put something on this, it could, send it anywhere. But ultimately, if you're a defender, your first job is to block a shot.
You know how, and first of all, we shouldn't absolve Nygren of blame. I think it's him who just gives it up far too cheaply. He just gets completely commits. It's half-arsed, it's lazy. sums him up so far, I would say. But yeah, when Tannadice comes in, you see the angle perfectly behind the goal that, you know how they talk about off like handball decisions these days, and they're like, oh, well, did he make himself bigger for blocking the ball? You're watching that and thinking he's actively made himself smaller.
Yeah.
It's like he's tried as much as possible to not be in the way of that shot, because he puts his hands behind his back, he like shrinks, and then he almost kind of turns away from it as it comes towards him. And I don't think, because you sometimes see players criticised, especially in the wall at free kicks, for turning out of the way of things because they've shat themselves. They basically don't want to get hit. It didn't feel like that either. It felt exactly like you described it. It was almost like leaving it to go through to the goalkeeper, which is nuts in that situation. And none of that should take away, as you said, from a really nice goal. And Tannadice, I saw someone mentioning, like, you know, he kind of is a bit of a one-trick pony, and that all he wants to do is get on the left-hand side, cut in, and shoot with the right. But as someone said, like, that's all Arjen Robben made his career out of doing in the opposite side, and nobody could stop him. And even someone like Danny Armstrong did it for McInnes on the opposite side for 3 years, basically. And okay, went off the boil a wee bit last season, but nonetheless was still doing that. Knowing what someone can do doesn't mean you can stop it. And so, yeah, I don't want to take away from that, but it's a really poor piece of defending.
And very shortly after that, Hearts were presented with a golden chance again to extend their lead, and believe it or not, Lawrence Pankland stepped up to dispatch the ball past Kasper Schmeichel to put them on the easy street.
Something that stood out to me in the aftermath of that penalty. So, I mean, Braga takes it as a penalty. Don't get it. It's absolutely a penalty. The dive is ridiculous, but nonetheless, when after it's been awarded, Cammy Devlin gets in Murray's face and gives him like a wee pat in the head and all the rest of it, like, which is very much on brand for Devlin. But I thought it summed up the lack of leadership, the lack of balls in the Celtic team, that not one single player seemed to take issue with it. I'm thinking, imagine doing that when Scott Brown was on the pitch, or when Neil Lennon was on the pitch. I can't imagine that ending well for that. I mean, it would end well in the sense that Hearts would probably have still won the game 3-1, but I don't think Cammy Devlin would have just been kind of left to it. I feel like there would have been people in his face, there would have been something made of it, and there didn't seem to be anything of that. And it's a bit symptomatic that you look at the squad, who's the leader, who's the captain on the pitch? It's Callum McGregor. To me, he's not a barnstormer. He's not someone like those two. And that's been okay when Celtic have needed quiet leadership, because they've been a good team and they've really needed someone to lead by example a bit. But when the chips are down, it feels like they maybe need someone a bit more of a dick than Callum McGregor is. Mm-hmm. And you look through that squad and there's really, I mean, Schmeichel maybe is, but there's not really a lot of angry men. And sometimes you need an angry man. Hearts have got them. Hearts have got plenty of them. Because that to me is a perfect blend at the moment. What you're seeing from Hearts, it's a mix of the sort of the flair or the unpredictability, or the sort of the exotic of the Jamestown, you know, Braga, Tannadice, the other guys that have come off the bench, we don't really know if they're good or not otherwise, like the other ones that they've signed, like Agiu and Magnuson and these guys, we don't know enough about them yet. But also the sort of grit that made Derek McInnes' Aberdeen team successful, ultimately not quite successful enough to win as many things as he would have liked. Had a good spell at Kelly with it as well, where they can play when you get in the final third and when you do that, but they are hard and they are aggressive and they kind of make you work for everything and they fight. There's none of that in Celtic. So if Celtic are to win this league, they're going to have to basically start playing football a lot better, because they're not going to do it through kind of grit and determination and all of those things.
And not only that, I think they're probably going to have to spend double or triple what they should have spent in the summer to try and fix things in January, and hope that Hearts have not built up enough of a beachhead to say.
I don't think you can put a number down for the lead that Hearts would have that they couldn't chuck away. Just with the nature of, like, if Hearts went into So I think it's like 22 games or something played, kind of coming into sort of January time, like mid to late January, once all those midweeks and stuff are done. If Hearts were 15 points clear with 16 games remaining, I could still see a very conceivable not winning the league. I genuinely don't think there's a number you could put on that when you would be absolutely dead set that they couldn't throw it away. But obviously it's just building up as much as they can, because basically not one single member of that Hearts squad is going to have gone the distance. Craig Gordon, but he's going to be sub-goalkeeper. And almost none of them have been in a title race, because Craig Gordon might have won titles, but I don't think he's been in a title race. So that will be interesting, I think, if they do keep going with it. But nonetheless, I feel they have done everything right and they have all the materials there. It's just whether they're ultimately good enough, to be honest, because they are good enough to have done what they've done so far. They're taking advantage of Celtic and Rangers as we got on to being pretty poor, but they are not flawless. They are not going to they're not going to keep winning every game. Yeah. So have they got enough to kind of turn a few draws into wins, a few defeats into draws, and just keep that gap up as much as they can? Because there will be a point where, even as bad as this Celtic team are, they probably will win 10 games in a row, and have Hearts got it in them to still be ahead?
Well, two teams that they'll certainly be hoping to finish ahead of as well played a game of football at Pittodrie. Aberdeen 1, Hibs 2. Hibs took a lead in the first half through Thibaut Clichy and some rotten defending before Eli Yuan struck pretty late in the second half. I say struck, ambled his way through to give Hibs the lead. Hibs did actually score a third through Josh Campbell, which was ruled out by VAR before Aberdeen got back a late and, by the sounds of it, incredibly undeserved consolation goal. That defeat for Jimmy Tilleen's Aberdeen leaves them still languishing in the playoff spot. I know there's only been 9 games so far, Craig, but let me dream. Whereas Hibs have somehow snuck up to 3rd place. Who do you want to go over first? Do you want to go over the strange case of Hibernian Football Club, or do you want to go over the more amusing case of Aberdeen Football Club?
I think we'll look at Aberdeen, because actually, watching this game, I didn't have loads to say about Hibs, to be honest. Like, they are well, maybe I can do my Hibs very briefly, because they're a good team. They have, to me, they're not any better than last season, and for that reason, I think they'll go backwards a little bit in terms of where they finish, but they'll still be a comfortable top 6 team. The reason they won this game was because they worked harder than Aberdeen, they had more desire than Aberdeen, and that feels like really cheap to say, but it was absolutely true in this game. They have got players, they've got footballers, as Aberdeen do, but they had far more graft in the middle of the park. They took advantage of things, and they did rely on a couple of really good saves from Salinger as well, just at the right moments. But it was far from a flawless Hibs performance. It was far from a dominant victory. It was actually a really good game, but they did deserve to win, and a lot of that was because they had the graft in the middle of the park. They had the aggression in defence that Aberdeen simply lack, and that brings me on to Aberdeen. I've watched them a few times this season. Early on in the season, when I watched them, I thought they were abject and without any redeeming qualities.
Yeah,
that wasn't the case in this game. They did have a semblance of a kind of route to goal. They were creating openings. Some of their attacking players did create things. They did hurt. I'll say they didn't really hurt Hibs. They did threaten Hibs, which is obviously one step short of hurting someone. Like, I'll smash your fucking face in versus actually doing it. But they did, like, they weren't without, there wasn't a performance without merit this time for Aberdeen. However, it comes off the back of getting scudded 6-0 in Europe in midweek, and it comes off the back of obviously an absolutely atrocious year, let's be honest. Basically now, it was this point last year where they got to 25 points from 9 games, the exact same that Hearts are on right now, and it's pretty much been downhill from there, even though they managed to win a Scottish Cup in amongst that. But this performance, to me, the first goal sums it up. Stuart Armstrong is tackled in the middle of the park. He is far too weak. He gets kind of bullied off the ball. Rather than try to kind of get back and win it, he tries to buy a foul. Had that foul been given, it's probably not getting overturned, but it's not much. And so the play was allowed to continue. I think it's Nooster that Klidgey... So the ball from Mulligan is really nice. And it's a really nice first touch from Klidgey and a really good finish. And he does hold off the defender well. But I think it's Nooster is so soft. He just looked like he felt the nudge and was just wanting no part of it. And when you're defending your goal 12 yards out or 15 yards out, kind of get away with that. And so it was a really well taken goal. I thought Klidgey, talking of Hibs, was really good. He ran the channels really well and made some really good runs. The jury's been out on him for me. Tony spoke very highly of him in the couple of times that he'd seen him in games I hadn't watched. This is the first time I've seen him play and thought, I can see what you're offering, which you would expect for a record signing.
Yeah, and I think that's been a big boost for Hibs as well, because obviously, we've seen Kieran Berry started this season with all guns blazing, and pretty much since he got called up to the Scotland squad, he's not quite been at those heights. That's going to be natural for a guy who's a 23-year-old who's, this is probably the most regular game time he's got, but he's definitely gone off the boil. With Klidgey, you would imagine it's almost the other way around, in that he's moved to a new country, new league, the pressure and onus on him of being a record signing as well, but you can see that he's beginning to adjust, and I think that's going to be important for Hibs as well, just having, you're not then relying on a big muscular Pfeiffer doing it for you every week. You can switch it up a little bit, but yeah, it was a really well taken goal, and as you say, it's almost just like the street smartness of the two sides is really what's on display there.
And that kind of continued through the game, because I felt most of the good chances that Hibs got was either through kind of pressing, harrying and winning the ball off Aberdeen in a way Aberdeen didn't really do to them, or it was taking advantage of massive gaps in Aberdeen's shape that came to me from the midfield and the attack not working hard enough, not running hard enough. Shinnie deservedly has been taking a lot of stick for being pretty poor this season, but he does at least kind of run and try and kick people, even if his legs are not what they were. But without him in that midfield, it felt very weak. And to me, that kind of is now highlighting with this Aberdeen team. If you saw them against Dundee, if you let them play, if you stand off, they are good enough. They have good enough players to hurt you. If you get in their faces, if you're physical with them, if you're aggressive with them, and let's be honest, that's what most teams in this league are. I think Stephen Presley's Dundee are a bit of a exception in that respect.
Come on to them, don't you worry.
Then they are going to offer up opportunities. You have the opportunity to basically just run over the top of them. And to me, that's what Hibs did with many of these openings. And yeah, so that would to me be the biggest concern for Aberdeen fans, is just, have they got the I talked about Celtic, and have they got the bottle for it? I'm sounding like a Yarda here, but that was the thing that stood out for me the most in this game, is that the team that ran harder, fought harder, won it, rather than winning it by having better players, because Aberdeen have got good players, but someone like Carlson was pretty anonymous. Someone like Ashich, as with two others, got subbed at half-time. Aberdeen had to make a triple sub at half-time. Gavin Malloy, inexplicably, he just seems to come in and play in very weird positions. The shape didn't make any sense. They changed it around at half-time. Didn't really make much difference. You saw, because then watching the goal back, the second goal, I think you would be amazed to show someone that goal and say that the two main people involved in it came on at either at half-time or afterwards, because it looked like a really tired. So I was kind of, I looked up at the clock and it was like 86 minutes or something, and I was about ready to give the Aberdeen defender the benefit of the doubt of being, you know what, it's a pretty long game, he's probably just a bit tired, and we know what Ewan's like, he can be quick when he wants to be, but he's a bit enigmatic. So even though he's a sub, he wasn't necessarily, it wasn't like he sprinted the way he actually can if he does it. But then I looked and it was Dorrington, and I'm like, you came on at half time, you've got no excuse here, and you're young, because it is. We'll get onto it with Dundee, funnily enough, later on, but it is such shit defending for what looks, and maybe at first to be a really good solo goal, and then you watch what Ewan does and what the defenders do, and he's just kind of ushered towards goal.
Yeah, and again, we will come on to this with Dundee. Take the booking. Like it's not that, you know, it is something that teams up and down the country at all levels do. If someone is bursting through and it's you or nothing, just take the booking, especially if you're still in the game at that point. Absolutely baffling.
He finishes it well and all the rest of it, fair play. And I thought Ewan and Campbell made a difference for Hibs, just with a bit like Ewan, not a perfect player, but because we've talked about the graft in the rest of the team, you can afford to have a bit more of a, let's say, a laid back player in your team. And Campbell shouldn't be a starter for Hibs, but when he does come on, he brings a lot of energy, and he's actually quite a clever player to me. Like he uses, not always the case, but he uses the ball quite well. He just runs about as well, and that was perfect for that game. So Hibs did that. They then thought they had the third goal. It gets ruled out, and then immediately almost Aberdeen go up the other end, and it felt like Iredale had kind of switched off for it was like that third goal went in and he went, right, that's my afternoon done. And then because his contribution to that Lazetic goal, which is also very poorly finished by Lazetic, but nonetheless, it's like I think two separate occasions he sort of hits the ball off Lazetic, and it's like, on you go, have a go. So that was pretty poor, but you can get away with a poor bit of defending when you're 2-0 up with 60 seconds left, compared to when your team ends up losing the game. But yeah, actually a really enjoyable game in general. I think Aberdeen are probably, even off the back of losing, you can see improvements, as I said, but they're also teetering to me on, I think they need to change the manager, and I think a better manager can get a bit more of a tune, or even a different manager get a bit more of a tune out of it. But if you can see how it can go well for them, which is they get playing with verve, they've got really good attacking players, and they create chances, score a lot of goals. You can see how it can go very badly with them, which is, you know, that sitting here in April time saying it was a rudderless squad, that's why they've ended up in the playoffs. Do you know what I mean? Either of those things are plausible for me at the moment, and I think they need to change the manager.
Yeah, absolutely, and certainly before the January transfer window, because it's a squad modelled in his own image. Speaking of another manager who I'm sure will still be looking to do some business in January, albeit maybe hoping to do something with the squad he's got, this was Danny Ruhl's first league game in charge of Rangers Football Club. He took on your beloved Ayrshire Killie, Craig, and he managed to secure the first 3 points for Rangers at home this season in a 3-1 victory that, I don't know if it's fair to say this or not, perhaps is owed quite a bit to Kilmarnock's goalkeeper, Eddie Beach. I've sort of cut my description of it short there, Craig, but everything that I have seen about this game seems to be coming back to Killie's goalkeeping woes. Can you fill in the listeners on just why exactly you're in the position you're in?
So I mean, Max Striek came in this summer and clearly brought in his number one and has been very good. But I think Kettlewell said last week, basically, players do routine testing, medical testing, as to deal with medical issues, to make sure that their health is all right, and something got flagged up in Striek's middle of last week, so he's basically been having to go for further checks. I think the suggestion was it's something around a heart issue, but we don't know more about it just now, and probably quite rightly, we don't need to know any more about it just now. It's a man's personal medical situation, and if there's something more for it, then we'll find out in due course. In the summer, we let Kieran O'Hara go. No great loss. He's now popped up at your lot.
On the bench for us, yeah.
And Robbie McCrory was loaned out to the Danish second tier. Now, Robbie McCrory, quite an expensive signing, like as in we paid money for him, makes him an expensive signing for Killie. Not the best first season. However, probably either a good sub, like by this standard for a team of Killie size, a decent sub goalkeeper to have, or could be a starter in a kind of pretty poor team. But probably for wage reasons, he was sent off to Esbjerg, and we brought in another goalkeeper, Eddie Beach, who's a Chelsea youth. He'd had a loan spell out in England, and this is him kind of trying to make his way in his game. He's still quite young. Beach played a couple of League Cup games. I didn't really think much of him, but we got by. And he then had a pretty poor league debut against Hearts last weekend. I felt he was probably indirectly at fault for a couple of goals, but nothing egregious. However, he made a couple of bad mistakes in that game that could have led to goals. In this game, he made an awful mistake that led to a correctly disallowed goal for offside. He looked really poor for Rangers' second goal. It was a header. To me, a good goalkeeper saves it. First goal, I'm happy to kind of mostly absolve him of blame. I don't think it's me and him. It's bad defending. The third goal is a shot that's straight at him, which he palms into his own net. Is Eddie Beach the only reason Killie lost this game? No, but do I think that with a better goalkeeper, just a little bit more, we could have got something out of it? Absolutely, because if you look at the stats, the XG is equal for both teams. Rangers didn't create loads of clear-cut chances. Killie didn't create many. The XG is hugely boosted by the fact our goal was a tap-in from 2 yards out because Jack Butland couldn't catch a corner. But we did have wee openings, we did have opportunities, and a little bit more quality for Killie, which is, I think, what this team lacks at the moment. Might have helped. We obviously talked about Striak being out. Gennaro Daniels got injured in his Suriname debut. Lasted 10 minutes in that. He's probably done for the season, which is bad luck. And it's funny because Kettlewell had that reputation at Motherwell where the players kept getting injured, but the two big players who are out here are a guy who had a heart thing and someone who got injured halfway around the world. I don't think Stuart Kettlewell can take a great deal of blame for either of those things, but it has left us a little bit short. And then Matty Kennedy being the third one who was injured before he even arrived at the club. So again, maybe a little bit of bad luck there, but nonetheless, like I don't think you can say Rangers didn't deserve to win, but it wasn't like some sort of convincing or dominant performance by them. Like they could easily have not won in the way that they haven't in other games.
Yeah, and you're forgetting about Scott Tiffany, who I believe
he's just came back on.
Back for Killie. I think it's something to do with Stuart Kettlewell, to be honest.
Must be.
Too many of these for not to just be a sheer coincidence. With Rangers, I think that what you've seen so far with Danny Ruhl is that he is trying to slowly but surely sort of break down the mental block that Russell Martin seems to put in place about Rangers actually flooding bodies forward. And I think that you did see it at times today, Rangers trying to sort of push further forward and being quite happy to leave fewer numbers back. But do you see green shoots of improvement? I mean, it's still a squad that, similar to Celtic's, is not you can count on one hand, in fact half of one hand, the number of players that are sort of a genuine championship, as in championship winning quality for Rangers. But do you think that Danny Ruhl's maybe working out something that he can do with them until he can get in his own guys?
Possibly. Like I was a wee bit disappointed when I saw their starting lineup today because there was less of the absolute shit in it. Like I was really hoping, for example, that Max Aarons would be playing. He wasn't. I was really hoping that Tannadice would play. He didn't, but he did come on and score. I was really hoping that we might still see Connor Barron playing. We didn't, and I was hoping we might see like Giga playing centre back, stuff like that. We didn't see any of that. Danilo obviously gets a goal in this one. He's someone who I think there's a player in there. He just gets injured far too often, and he's maybe flattered to deceive given the fee they spent on him. Migoma was the one I was hoping to target because I think he's not very good, but he actually had an alright game. So yeah, there's maybe enough to see there, but I also think they still gave the ball away quite a lot. They still looked like pretty... They were pretty open when Kelly had kind of the odd counter-attack. Again, Kettlewell teams don't seem to like to have the ball, which makes it hard to judge because they just kind of sit back and want to hit you on the counter and stuff. But it's hard to really say, to be honest. I think they can't get worse than what they were under Martin in terms of creating things, in terms of looking like they're going to hurt teams. But at the same time, they were gifted. To me, they were gifted probably all the goals by poor play in one way or the other. Although sometimes you force poor play by pressure and all the rest of it.
And at least the manager wears a suit. So
that's the main thing.
The big improvements are being made here, there, and everywhere. I'll tell you somewhere that big improvements are not necessarily showing themselves though, Craig, and that's down Dundee way. And I'm afraid I'm going to have to turn to my team. Dundee travelled to the Falkirk Stadium to take on last season's league champions. We did go into a 1-0 lead thanks to a Clark Robertson header. We then conceded a goal thanks to a Clark Robertson own goal before Connor Allen was given the freedom of Falkirk to amble forward and dispatch a fairly late winner for Falkirk, which is a victory that takes them into the top 6, albeit the league is very concertina down. Gives John McGlynn's men another boost, gives Falkirk fans another reason to go, League One Falkirk, is it? And gives me another chance to start to shit myself a wee bit about Dundee. Craig, ask me whatever you like, whether it's about Falkirk or more ideally about what's happening with Dundee.
So I think the thing that jumps out for me in terms of Falkirk is they were obviously kind of praised for the style of football coming up. And I think a lot of us said they might have to sort of sacrifice a little bit of their principles. Did you see a sign of that? Because I felt like there was a wee bit against Motherwell, but what did you think?
They were atrocious in the first half, and that's going to sound very, very bitter. And maybe it is just very, very bitter, Craig. But it was, and again, I'm looking at this very much through the prism of what I've seen from Dundee this season. But generally speaking, the pattern that Dundee games have, whether or not we're good, is that the opposition has genuinely something around, I think Falkirk maybe had something like 71% possession in the first half, something mad like that, but we let the opposition dominate the ball and we try and counter-attack. And you can sort of accept that when it's Celtic and Rangers, when it's sides that you're hoping to compete with and certainly finish above, you can accept that far, far less. But I felt like Falkirk were pretty toothless in the first half. They had, as I say, they had a lot of the ball. They didn't really know what to do with it. They were obviously missing quite a few bodies at the back at the moment, which was a point that I rather foolishly made right before losing to them. But I'd say that at half-time, I was pretty confident that Dundee were going to walk away with all 3 points. And I think there was even a point in that half where Dundee were third. But then what happened in the second half was that, and again, because I'm not an absolute expert in Falkirk, I can't pick out exactly what it is. But there was something that McGlynn did, combined with something that Presley didn't do. This is great analysis, isn't it? That just meant that the momentum totally shifted and Falkirk were all over Dundee, and that's, you can bear witness to that by looking at any of the sort of match highlight packages over the course of the whole game. It really was that quintessential game of two halves, and Falkirk were battering at Dundee, and there were various points where I think there was a point where McCracken played the ball, and I can't remember who it was to, but it was a mirror image of something that Falkirk did in the first half, where the keeper just foolishly gave up possession. Thankfully didn't cause any damage at that particular moment. But I think what I saw there was a manager who was able to make some tweaks at halftime versus a manager who was happy to stick with what he had. But then after Falkirk got back into the game through the aforementioned own goal from Clark Robertson, which is almost a carbon copy of when he scored earlier in the season, where he is similar to Dane Murray, sort of trying to clear the ball and stop it going through, but ends up smashing into the back of his net instead. And after that, for about 10-15 minutes after that, Falkirk were battering down the door. Their tails were up. They knew exactly what position we were in. To be fair to Presley, he did then change it up, and that seemed to swing the momentum back a little bit in Dundee's favour. It was still pretty eeksy-peeksy. But the real issues for Dundee lie in the fact that Simon Murray is clearly not 100% at the moment. And he was replaced by Emile Aqua halfway through the second half. And Emile Aqua does not have it. We paid actual money, actual pound sterling for him. And he is 6'3", 6'4", but he is that 6'3", 6'4" striker who does not use his physicality and does not actually really have any other attributes either. He just is not someone who you can see leading the line. And as long as it takes for Simon Murray to get back to full fitness, we might struggle and we might rely, as we have in recent games, on set pieces and sort of sweeping counter-attacks. There's probably two things that I would pick out from the game. One is something that wasn't picked up in the most of the highlight packages, which was in the first half with about 10 minutes to go. And I don't know if you've actually seen this, Craig, but the corners swung in, Falkirk clear it to the edge of the box. Ethan Hamilton goes for the ball and is kicked in the balls, for want of a better phrase. But he does have a slightly high boot, and the referee ends up booking Ethan Hamilton, but not going to VAR. And I'm led to believe that Michael Stewart was absolutely doing his head in about this. He was also doing his head in about another Stonewall penalty, which he thought wasn't a penalty, which we'll come to in another game. But for me, and I very much have dark blue tinted glasses on with this, I fail to see how that is not reviewed and then goes for a penalty. So I'll be very interested to see what comes out from SFA Towers this week to explain the thinking behind that. I think the initial suggestion is that it was seen as a high boot and a foul by Hamilton. But if you look at the angles, certainly that the Dundee highlights packages and DTV have picked up, you can see that Hamilton gets the ball first and he moves it away from the Falkirk player. So personally, I struggle to see it. The other one which Dundee fans are picking up on, which is a real Yerda thing and which there's far more issues with otherwise, is Falkirk's winner when the ball goes up in the air and it, with a lot of backspin on it, the ball bounces back over Emile Aqua's head and then Conor Allen sweeps up to score. Some Dundee fans have said, oh, it's ridiculous, it's because of that pitch, that's the only reason Falkirk scored. No, I'm probably going to go with the 5 or 6 Dundee players who decided not to put in a tackle, not to close down Conor Allen, not to just take a booking for him, falling for the feints as well, and basically just totally and utterly capitulating, because there will always be weird bounces on pitches. There's always going to be stuff, that happens that takes you by surprise, but you cannot then just sit back and let somebody who, it doesn't matter who it is at what level, you cannot then just give them the freedom to just very slowly and languidly make their way through the entire team to go and score a winner.
I don't know if you'll remember this goal, Gary, because it was probably less important to you than it would have been to me at the time, but it was a midweek game between Kelly and Dundee at Rugby Park, I want to say in 2018 under Steve Clarke. It was Stephen Colker's debut, I think, for Dundee, and he scored in it. And in the last minute of the game, Kelly down to 10 men, Ian Wilson picked up the ball in the midfield and had like a really, really slow, mazy dribble towards goal, kind of stepped on his left foot and curled a really kind of piss poor week. Not weak, but like not exactly. It's not like he battered the ball into the net. It really reminded me of that goal. It was like good from the player who scored it in the sense that he kept going, he had a wee feint, but it was hardly like the most impressive, mazy goal of all time. It's like one of those where you think competent defending stops that, and also even the finish itself, while you can't blame the goalkeeper, it's like it like trundles into the net. And obviously a massive moment for a young guy who I think was making his first start, definitely his first league start for Falkirk, having I think come in from Rangers as a youth player where he was nowhere near their first team. He's not like really young. I think he's 21. It seemed an odd signing to me, but he's kind of been given a chance, and whether he'll be good enough or not, it's a pretty big moment for him and a big moment for Falkirk because it's 2 wins in a row. But it's an interesting goal to concede, I would say, from a Dundee point of view.
Yeah, and I've also seen quite a lot of Falkirk fans taking issue with the fact that not more has been made of it. But again, that comes back to the point I made before about other goals, which is that when a goal looks that good, that can in large part be down to the deficiencies of those attempts to defend it. One final thing to mention, speaking of attempting to defend, which I'm absolutely not going to do here, obviously Scott Bain is in goal for Falkirk and was enjoying his day, winding up the Dundee fans, some of whom, and it was one of the drunkest away crowds you'll ever see. There was one guy who was literally put in a wheelchair and taken away. He has imbibed that much before kickoff. But anyway, if you cannot, don't dish it out if you can't take it, because basically Scott Bain turned to the Dundee fans and was giving it
that was equaliser, right?
Yeah, and that was the equaliser, and someone tried to run on the pitch, and it's just it's embarrassing because if you're going to go and abuse someone essentially at their workplace, you should be able to accept that when things don't go your way, that's what's going to happen. Do I still feel as if there's going to be some sort of slip up by Bain at the return fixture at Dens? I do. But yeah, don't be dicks. Don't run on the pitch. Don't lob stuff at players. It's stupid. But thankfully the club's put out a statement basically saying it's not okay working with Police Scotland, and when the fans are identified, which is not going to be difficult because, as we all know, Falkirk have done a brilliant job of selling season tickets this season. They're selling out almost the entirety of the stadium, and therefore the away allocation's very, very small. I think it was 700 Dundee fans were there. So it's not going to be difficult to identify the guy who ran on the pitch and was led away by police and stewards anyway. So that was foolish. Dundee don't have a game in midweek because the game that we should have been playing was rearranged against Livingston due to us being out of the League Cup early. So I am slightly concerned where we're going to be in a couple of weeks' time, because the games that we have coming up are Hearts and Rangers. It's not looking too good for us.
Yeah, I think just to me, Dundee just look like every other team. You can see good aspects of it, and obviously Dundee have won games. They beat Celtic, but
everyone's beat Celtic.
You just struggle to see what's like fun about watching them at the moment.
It's what it is when, as we've seen against Celtic and actually against Rangers at Ibrox, maybe this is what we need to do. Maybe we just need to hire out Stephen Presley to teams before they play Celtic and Rangers, because when that shape, and I think that the team that's played against Celtic and they're against Falkirk is probably the best team and the best shape for what we have. And when it works really well. But as you said much earlier in the pod, we are about the only team that is not that sort of high pressing, high intensity team, and it can work out for you. But also in this league, if you're the only one doing that, I think it can make you quite easy to play against and to work out a system for it. And I think you've seen that in games against us this season. We've, as the game has gone on, I feel like the better managers in the league have worked out what to do in order to unpick Dundee or to keep us at bay. Not that it's that difficult. So no, it's not been a red letter weekend for my half of the street in the city of Discovery, but we should move on to the other side of the street in the in Scotland's sunniest city, as Dundee United ran out 3-1 victors over St Mirren at Tannadice. St Mirren took first half lead after yet another flap from United's goalie Kucherenko, gifted Nolundulu the easiest goal that he will ever score in his puff, before Dundee United benefited from some interesting choices made by St Mirren players. Initially,
I think that's a bad decision. Personally,
the pass.
No, the giving the free kick.
Yeah.
I think it's not a back pass it's given, right? It's handball.
No, sorry, it's because the goalie picks up that.
Yeah, I do not think it's outside area. I think when you zoom right in on when he picks it up, it's hard to tell because you don't have a good angle, and the assistant does have a pretty good angle. But everything I've seen from that makes me think it seems to me like it probably wouldn't be out of the box. And the thing that makes me think it more so is the referee gives him a yellow card for it. Mm-hmm. To me, Muller is hanging about that ball. To me, if that's a handball, it's a red card. And VAR doesn't go back and give him a red card. And that to me makes me think that VAR's had a look at it and thought, I think that's actually in the box. I could be wrong.
I think the difficulty was that, as is usually more the case for when you have goals which are the result of cutbacks from the byline, and it's very, very difficult. And these are the ones that you always see VAR take ages over, where you're trying to judge how much of the ball, exactly what the position of the ball is vis-a-vis the line. And I think that VAR did not go the whole hog in recommending the red card, probably because it would be incredibly difficult and it's one of those decisions where you sometimes see it in a different way, where a referee will give a corner kick when there's a debatable call for a penalty or something like that.
That's what the yellow card felt like to me. And obviously VAR cannot intervene to overturn a free kick. Yeah. Because it's not been given as anything. However, it could have given that red card, and to me, if it was clearly out of the box and they could confirm that, and in fact, even if it wasn't, because they have the on-field decision is a handball, to me that should follow with a red. That makes me think VAR have looked at that and thought that's probably not a red, not a foul, but they can't go back on that, and it's obviously it should be defended better, the free kick, because it's a decent free kick, but it's not savable.
And it's also an interesting one.
Not unsavable, not unstoppable.
Because you see that it somehow manages to go between, I can't remember who it is, but St Mirren has someone lying on the ground, anticipating Satsford trying a bit of a daisy cutter, but it still somehow seems to go between him and the wall, who jump. But as you say, it was a fairly big moment. I think the game had been pretty well balanced before then. Not St Johnstone, who am I speaking about? Dundee United changed their shape and personnel a little bit to match up with St Mirren. And believe it or not, when you match up against a Stephen Robinson side, you have a bit of a war of attrition on your hands. But that goal swung the momentum a little bit, but not as much perhaps as the decision which Michael Stewart took quite a bit of umbrage with, I'm led to believe, on the radio, but actually looking back, or once you see it in slow motion, you can see why it's given, which is a very late penalty for Dundee United following a tackle challenge. I'm not sure how to describe it. Following an incident between Alexander Gogic and Nikolai Moller in the box, where Gogic is not going for Moller, he's going for the ball, and Moller, I think, almost like trips or stumbles, and his leg ends up between this sounds like a Dundee fan doing post-hoc error or proto-hoc error, but his leg goes between Gogic's foot and the ground. For me, it is it's by the letter of the law, and you'll know far better than me, but once I saw it and sort of looked at what it was, it is a red card and a penalty, but it's not an attempt. He's not trying to do him, and he's not trying to. I've seen some United fans online saying he was trying to end his career. No, he wasn't. He's not a psychopath. But also, it was.
I mean, well, but no, for me, like the angle from behind the goal shows it, and it's one of those where as soon as you see that angle from behind the goal, where it's the studs and it's the straight leg and stuff like that, it's very hard to not give the red card at that point, because if again you just put that same challenge in the middle of the park, and minus the desperation of lunging in your own box to defend, people will probably more happily see that as a red card. I think it is an annoying one in the sense that, yeah, as you said, it's an attempt to play the ball, but it's dangerous in that respect. It's 1,000,000% a penalty regardless of whether you think it's a red card, and ultimately that's the bit that swings the game. And so I have sympathy in a sense for Gogic, but only in the sense that I don't think he meant it. I do think it's hard not to give the red card.
Yeah. And that was followed up by, for the second week in a row, a pretty wondrous strike from Craig Sibbald to sort of put the cherry on the cake and make sure that United keep the 3 points and keep their place in the top 6 too. I don't want to talk about that too much, Craig. I want to look a little bit at St Mirren, because they're not having a great start to the season, and I think because of the struggles of others, it's gone under the radar a little bit.
Yeah. I kind of looked at it was when they lost that game yesterday, and I thought, do you know what? I can't actually remember St Mirren winning very many games this season. It kind of snuck up on me a little bit, because they started off all right, and then it's kind of it's 3 defeats in a row now in the league, and it's starting to maybe like look a bit worse for them. It's Stephen Robinson's St Mirren. We know they will probably turn it around, but they're kind of having some struggles in front of goal. They've not been scoring very many. I think the only game they've scored more than one goal in was when they won away to Falkirk. Even then, it was kind of a couple of like goals in the last half hour of the game. They are not looking the sort of attacking force that they have been in the past. I'm not wanting to go in too much on it, because I think they'll turn it round. I kind of expect them to do that, but at the same time, they are probably not going to. It's already to me looking like they might not hit the heights of the last few seasons. That's not to say they couldn't get the top 6, but I don't think the vibes are not good. But of course, they have a cup semi-final next weekend. They could be going to Hampden. They could be in a cup final, and against either these Rangers or Celtic teams, it would be a winnable cup final at that. But we will wait and see there. But I think it's kind of just slipped under the radar that they are now sitting 9th, and they are only a couple of points ahead of Aberdeen. Had Aberdeen won today, they would have only been out of that on goal difference. So it's all tight. They'll probably be good enough to turn it around. They still have some good players, but it's maybe not been the start they would have expected.
Yeah, and I think we're literally just going to turn to their opponents next weekend as well. I think that is such a sliding doors moment for both the clubs, because as you say, it's a winnable, regardless of who wins the other semi. It's going to be a winnable final, and it's a big day out. Not that I would know, but I believe it's a pretty big day out, and you get to have fun and whatnot. But no,
I mean, you talk about sliding doors moments. So if we move on to this game, I feel like this game was a sliding doors moment for Motherwell, as well, because when they went 1-0 down, I was starting to be a bit like, they're getting a lot of plaudits, and deservedly so, because they've been interesting to watch, but are they about to kind of yet again not win a game? But they did turn this one round ultimately.
Yes. And this game being their tie against Livingston at the it's not the Tony Macaroni Arena anymore.
The home of the Set Fair Arena.
Of course, how can I forget the home of the Set Fair Arena? Livy went ahead thanks to a Bokila penalty before Motherwell returned the favour in the second half through an Apsam penalty, and then Elijah, just after initial effort was ruled out, ended up scoring again anyway, just for kicks. to ensure that the 3 points went back to Lanarkshire. Now, we've had fairly extensive notes from Mr. Graham Thulis on this. There is one thing I'm going to pick up on, which I do not agree with him on, and this is my bias definitely creeping in here, Craig. He does say, I think Livy will be all right. I do not think they'll be all right. And can I tell you for why? They have done this on so many occasions now where they have played pretty well and ended up losing to a last-minute goal. And being probably the resident expert on the Terrace Scottish Football podcast on what it means or the signs to look out for when your team's about to get relegated, one of them is when you're playing well and you think you should be taking home points, but your defence just does not hold up when it really should at the last minute, and you're conceding these goals. I say I have fears for Livy. I really don't. I hope it's them that go down, because it means it's not Dundee that go down. But
Two teams could go down, Gary.
They could indeed, but I would rather have that save execution and hope that we can get a decent lawyer ahead of the playoffs. No, the thing is, obviously, this is a Livy side that's still missing Ryan McGowan, who I think has been covered in other pods, had an extended stay in hospital, lost quite a bit of weight. He was on commentary duties today for Hearts versus Celtic, but I think the suggestion is it'll be a little bit of time before he comes back into that back line.
As much as up until now, like if you'd said Ryan McGowan even 2 years ago when he was at St Johnstone, you'd have been like, he's probably reaching the end of his top flight career. Yeah. He had that little kind of renaissance at Livy, and it kind of is a big miss just for what he brings as a kind of character.
Yeah, and I mean that's the thing with this Livy team. You would never ever rule out a side managed by Davy Martindale, but it does feel as if I think so far they're maybe having them and Falkirk are almost having the opposite seasons from I think what people would stereotypically presume, which is that I think a lot of people were expecting Falkirk to come up to look quite decent, but maybe not have that quality and to be struggling. And I think that the problem is that once you get into the winter cycle of games, I think that's always when you see the newly promoted sides begin to struggle. And Livy have not got the points on the board. There's also the psychological impact of, and I know it from last season, if you're going to see your side, and regardless of when you take the lead, when you have the lead, going into the final minutes, you're thinking, we're going to do something daft here. We're going to do something stupid here. It chips away, and it means that you never have any confidence. A little bit like what you were saying about Hearts. There's not a number that you could put on Hearts having as a lead. There is not a scoreline at the moment I think you could put on Livingston having a lead and expect them to hold on to it. Albeit, obviously, in this case, they only had a single goal lead before the penalty from Motherwell to restore parity.
Yeah, and that's the interesting part. Like, you kind of think, I think because you see it as David Martindale's Livingston, they are clearly not as bad as a Livingston team that kind of meekly got relegated after the pretty lengthy spell in the top flight. You kind of therefore do go, yeah, they'll be all right. But maybe, as you say, maybe they are just a wee bit short of what you need. But even in this game, you did see, if I say I was following this originally on the BBC Live text, and I just kept reading about Motherwell chances and amongst it, and I kind of therefore thought it was pretty one-sided. So then I was kind of surprised to see Graham's notes and then see the highlights and the bits that I watched back, and actually Livingston were very much part of the game. They had opportunities. They had a big chance where, as much as I could think we can be critical of them in general, Ward makes a really big save at 1-1 as well. So they had moments, they had chances, kind of good opportunities to score goals, actually. The one from Yengi, quite nearly end especially. But at the same time, as you say, yet again, they have those chances and they don't win.
Yeah. And I think turning to Motherwell, I mean, first of all, I do not have a clue what Liam Gordon was thinking.
That's terrible.
That is an absolutely atrocious penalty to give away. But I think that from what Graham has said to us, I think it's a similar story in a way to when Motherwell played Dundee, which is that once, in my case Dundee, and in this case Livingston, once we figured out what it was Motherwell were doing that was allowing them to run over the top of us, and we cut off the supply, they didn't have a clue what to do. which is probably something that, I mean, obviously at the end of the day, Motherwell have, they've got the 3 points, they've got a cup semi-final coming up, and like these are things that, particularly given the relative change in personnel and certainly the change in playing style that has come into Motherwell, these are things that can be worked on and improved. But the fact that there's almost just a little bit like those annoying adverts you get at the bottom, this one neat trick to make Motherwell stop playing football, has to be a little bit concerning for Motherwell.
Yeah, is it or is it not? Because they've played far better in games and they've not won. And then I'm therefore not going to be critical of them when they go and win a game. Like, they need to be able to win games. Not like if they're losing games when they're playing really well, they also need to be able to win games when they're playing badly. It's the only way they can get by. Because I think I said before, it's kind of felt with Motherwell like they need to do everything perfectly to win games. And maybe this showed that they don't. Like, okay, yes, it's against one of the poorer, we think, teams in the league. It's really hard to tell who's the poorer and better teams in the league up to this point, except for Hearts, essentially. But maybe it actually points to them being all right after all. Yeah, being all right after all, you know what I mean? They can actually get points on the board, that they don't have to be brilliant to get the win. And you did still see some nice play. They are wasteful, and then it's wasteful both in the way that they make the final ball and then the finishing itself. I think, like, Charles Cook, who to me is far to deceive a bit so far, is a player that I quite liked and thought was going to be a really good signing. That overhead kick that he attempts kind of sums it up for me, where he's trying to score the flashy goal, but he's got a teammate standing behind him who's going to be in a much better position. That kind of sums up how they've been so far this season. And the fact that they had to almost have 4 goals to score twice also sums it up for me. Like, that they have to work a lot harder to score goals, but at the same time they won, and that's all they need to do. They just need to get wins on the board, and that buys confidence and buys time for them to get into their style. Yeah. They got Slattery back. That's pretty important as well.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of him, and I think that they've got a lot of quality players in the middle of the park. So obviously they've got Elliot Watt and Fasinger as well, but having him back, having Elijah Just as well, who seems to have finally got over his jet lag, it's really important.
It's just going to be constant for him. Although I did see New Zealand were just playing in Europe in their 2 games this window, which might have helped him, because otherwise he's just going to be back and forward. So the guy's just recovered, plays 1 game, and then it's another international break. But yeah.
So I've got a feeling the Motherwell physio might be contriving reasons. No, you can't go. Why not? I've just got a bad feeling about this one, Elijah. You just can't go. Trust me. No, it's, as you say, it's very much picking holes, because it's good fun to do, to try and annoy Graham. But yeah, it's another 3 points on the board for Motherwell, who, as we said when we were speaking about St Mirren, it's a big chance for them next weekend. Motherwell have got a fairly decent cup record recently. They've had quite a few trips to Hampden, and obviously this is another one. I think there's, at the last count, there's about 20,000 tickets have been sold for the game, which between Motherwell and St Mirren's a pretty good number. So it's a game that at least I'm looking forward to, because I think it's 2 very, very different styles that are going to be on display.
I think it's just good to watch, to see a cup semi-final or a big game at Hampden that is none of the big city clubs, not even just like not Rangers or Celtic, to be like Motherwell v St Mirren. I think the last time, I keep saying this, the last time it happened was the COVID season with the League Cup. That's not true. We had Falkirk v Inverness in the Scottish Cup a few years ago, but that was, aside from that one, we've not, and they're almost like, they were like both lower league teams. That was almost like too far. It's like you want to kind of the sort of smaller Premiership clubs going head to head in the big stage to kind of see how it goes. I'm looking forward to that game as well. But especially because we're away at Falkirk next weekend, and there was about 3 tickets available, so I'm not going there. So I can catch probably both semi-finals, which will be good. But yeah, I think Motherwell should go in as favourites, given we've just spoken about St Mirren's form, and the fact that although Motherwell's form has been patchy, they have generally been playing well. you feel like the big occasion should suit their style better, but they'll have to earn it against. Well, yeah, you always have to earn a win against Mirren.
And that leads us to the end of the podcast. There will obviously be lots of podcasts dropping throughout the week, not least because there is a midweek card of games before we get to more Premiership fixtures next weekend, along with the aforementioned League Cup semi-finals. So thanks very much, Craig, for joining me this evening.
You're very welcome, and I can't believe we've done 80 minutes.
I know. And hopefully Craig Fowler has not enjoyed Hearts' victory so much that you're listening to this.
This is Thursday's Scottish football podcast.
I'm sure he is a man who copes very well with his hangovers.
That's true. That's true. Very well documented.
He'll be up at 5:30 a.m. sticking his face into a bottle of sparkling water or something like that. But anyway, thanks again, Craig.
Cheers.
Thanks again, dear listeners. And yeah, thanks. Enjoy your football whenever it comes, because I bloody well won't.